Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today is going to be a book-related content video for you because it's actually been a little while since I have honestly recorded something that is just bookish. So thank you for kind of sticking around. If you just subscribe to my channel for book content, I obviously have been trying to incorporate that into my vlogs that I've been doing, my weekly vlogs. But besides that, today is actually going to be a video that I've been meaning to record for a while. I've just been really busy. It is going to be my August wrap-up. And so if you're new to this channel, please like this video. Please subscribe to my channel if you want more content like books or vlogs or playing video games, whatever it might be. So thank you so much for joining this video, and let's go ahead and get started with my August wrap-up. I read quite a few books in August, and that's part of the reason why I've been kind of putting off this video for a while, is because there's just so many books that I read that were actually really good. There were some that were kind of iffy, but for the most part, it was a really good reading month. I don't have the stats on hand right now, kind of similar to what happened last month or last wrap-up. I didn't have the stats ready. I'm kind of been all over the place recently, so I'll go ahead and show the stats here, but I know it was kind of like up in the air. There were some 3 stars, there were some 5 stars, there were a lot in the middle. So yeah, I'll go ahead and actually talk about each book individually though, and again, I'm going to have the stats kind of on the screen for a little while just to kind of show you like what's been going on. I am going to be doing a video hopefully in the future, in the next month or so, kind of going over my 5-star reads that I've read over the course of the year, my like 3-star or lower like DNF books that I don't know if I would necessarily recommend. I'm really excited to actually record those videos, and there's going to be more towards the end of the year. So really look forward to that if you like to kind of get like top 10 kind of videos. Like those are going to be coming to you very shortly, especially since I've been creating content for YouTube now for a couple months now, and by the time I make those videos, it'll be almost half a year. So I'll have a lot to kind of talk about and to kind of, I don't know, just look back on. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so the first book that I read in the month of August actually is technically The Hand of the Sun King. It was an arc that I had read for NetGalley, and it was okay. I ended up giving it 3 stars. I think the reason why I gave it 3 stars, it is a while since I've read the book. I think I gave it 3 stars because the overall like concept of the story was interesting. I really liked how they incorporated magic into these like kind of tribes of different sorts of people, different civilizations that live, and to kind of give you more of an inclusivity to, I don't know, like how different cultures kind of interact with each other. But the thing that I didn't really like is that it felt like it was very rushed. It was very, like, there were moments where they just kind of skipped along with the timeline, that years went by. And I understand that they were trying to really get, like, the early years of the main character into this first book. And it is going to be a series, I believe. I understand that, like, they wanted to kind of skip around to kind of, like, touch on the very important parts of it. I just didn't really like how they jumped around, because I felt like there were some, like, really important scenes missing from it, like interactions with certain characters, and a certain love interest that might have happened but kind of fell flat in a lot of ways. I had a lot more thoughts in my, I did like a book review for The Hand of the Sun King, so if you want to check out that video, I'll leave a little card up here to kind of show you, kind of direct you towards that video. I went into a lot more detail about what I thought of the book in that video. But yes, I gave it 3 stars. It was okay. I don't know if I necessarily want to pick up the second book, although I am a little bit interested, so we'll see. And the first book is out by now. I think it came out in the beginning of August or middle of August, so it'll be out now. So I would recommend reading it if you're interested. It's definitely kind of like a high fantasy, but like not really high fantasy. Like I actually would say like a mid fantasy, like something that if you're interested in fantasy, then that would definitely be a book that you'd be interested in. The next book that I read, or actually the next book that I finished, was an audiobook. It was Fortuna Sworn. It was actually the first book in the Fortuna Sworn series. I was reading it or listening to it because Cody over at, I'll leave her description or her channel in the description below. But she does this kind of like monthly book club kind of thing where when she does her TBR game, she always like has options from the TBR of like a buddy read for everyone that watches her channel. And Fortuna Sworn was one of the ones that she had done, and she did this one actually back in July. And it was actually the first month that I really like started watching her content. So I was like, hey, I want to be a part of this buddy read. So I found an audiobook of it and I was listening to it. It took me almost 2 months to listen to it because honestly, it was kind of okay. It wasn't really great. It wasn't awful either. That's why I was kind of interested in listening to it. Honestly, it didn't really do a lot for me. I ended up giving it 2 stars. It's basically about this nightmare Fortuna Sworn who is like, she's kind of like the last of her species. There's not a lot of nightmares left in the world, but there's like a lot of, you know, like fae and other creatures that kind of coexist with humans. And so she kind of gets involved with the fae, where she ends up marrying the like king of the fae or the prince of the fae. She kind of like she only does that because she wants to try and rescue her brother, who she thought was missing or dead, but she finds out that he is with the fae court, with the unseelie court, kind of helping, kind of being a slave of a sort to another like kind of prince of the fae world. And so she basically tries to become a queen in order to save her brother from, you know, being brainwashed like he has been. And the story is interesting. Like, I really like the story. I just didn't like a lot of like the narrative, and I think part of that was because of the voice actor for the audiobook. It's not that she didn't do a good job. It's that I just wasn't really like interested in like how she was portraying some of the like actions of the characters in it. But I gave it 2 stars. It was okay. I definitely don't want to continue the series, but I mean, add a little bit of smugness. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, then I would recommend listening to it. Otherwise, I personally didn't really enjoy it. But the next book that I read, actually the next physical book that I read, it was Misery by Stephen King. Now this book is one that I've been wanting to read for a very, very long time. It's a very old book. It's one of his first books that he ever wrote. I gave it 5 stars easily because it was honestly one of my favorite books I've ever read. I knew a lot about the plot of this story. It's basically about this this author, Paul Sheldon. He is very well known for writing a lot of fantasy or fiction books. One of his most well-known and most popular series was Misery, which is kind of following this fictional character, Misery. She's kind of like, I think it's like a detective love kind of like serial series that it's not like super good quality, but so many people really love it. And anyway, he finished off that series and he was like writing another book. He was going down Colorado, like down these like mountainous paths, and he ended up getting into a car accident. And this woman found him and kind of saved him. Like, you know, she brought him to her house. Except she didn't really save him. She actually kidnapped him. And now he is in severe pain because his legs are basically shattered. And she is holding him captive in her basement because she wants him to write another book, a book only for her, following Misery, because he had finished the Misery series by killing her off. And now this like biggest fan of his is like, hey, I want you to write a book just for me, and I want it to be better than the last book that you wrote because I don't believe that she actually died. And it's this whole story about him like kind of dealing with being held captive and being in pain and almost kind of like being forced to like be there, not only because, you know, he's obviously locked up in the room, but also because he's actually getting hooked on the drugs that she's giving him to kind of fight the pain. And it's a really interesting story. There really is no supernatural or paranormal aspects of the story. It really is just a story between 2 characters, one that's holding him captive and the other that's being captive. And it's just such an interesting story. I love this so much. Even if you're not a huge fan of Stephen King, I really recommend reading this book because it really was different for him. Like, it's an older book, so if you like his older stories, then you will love this book. And it's not that long. It is a movie also. I haven't watched the movie yet, but I really want to because there were some scenes I would love to see on the screen. It would be very graphic and very disturbing, to be honest. But yeah, it was an amazing book. I gave it 5 stars, and I'm really happy that I finally was able to read it. The next book that I read was actually another physical book, obviously. It is Caravelle by Stephanie Garber. It is the first book in the Caravelle trilogy. This is actually a series that my fiance Lucas had picked out at Barnes & Noble. He's been really wanting to get it for a long time. It was actually a box set of hardcovers that had these like really nice kind of art on the covers, and all of them are kind of connected to each other, and they have like different symbols of what Caravelle is. This one was like a tear, the next one's a star, and then the final one, I don't remember exactly what that symbol is. But basically, it's a series about this girl, Scarlet, who has been trapped on this island. It's very different from our world in that she, you know, there's like these islands and these like kind of bureaucratic systems of, you know, monarchies and all that kind of stuff. And she lives on this like very small, like kind of isolated island with her father and her sister Tella and a bunch of other like people, citizens of that like little small continent. And she's been wanting to escape. Like, her and her sister have been wanting to escape the island. Their father's really like awful to them, and like, you know, kind of manipulates and bullies them, and it hurts them honestly, to kind of like make them fall in line with what he wants. But they kind of feel like they're forced to stay there because, one, they're young, and two, they really don't have anywhere else to go. The other problem is that their mother had left them years ago, like I think over 10 years ago, and to the fact that like they almost don't even remember her. Like, Tella doesn't remember her at all, and Scarlet kind of remembers her, but it seems like she doesn't really want to talk too much about, you know, what happened when she was there. But anyway, so the story is about Scarlet and Tella, who find out that there is this like kind of really big game kind of centered event called Caravelle, which is hosted by this this kind of like entity called Legend. No one knows who Legend is, but he's like this very powerful magician, and he puts on these games once a year, and you have to have tickets in order to be able to attend and to be able to play the games. And there's like magic involved in the games, and like a lot of people kind of go insane during the games because they believe too much of what's happening in the narrative of the games, to the point where like they can't really tell the difference between the game and what's real. Scarlet has been wanting to join the games for a long time because she feels as though there's a connection between Caravelle and her mother, because her grandmother had gone to the games and had told her a lot about these really nice things about the games. And it's to the point where like she really wants to go to the games because she's going to be married off to a count, and basically her life is going to be done when she's married. So she kind of wants to have this like final chance to be able to, you know, just to enjoy life and to be able to like have fun. And Tella kind of like forces her to be able to do this, but then Scarlet like actually enjoys it. The story is very interesting because, like I had said earlier, you don't know what's the game and what's real life, and it's a lot of like twists and turns and like trying to figure out like what's real, what's being manipulated, what is Scarlet understanding versus what the reader understands as far as like what's happening in the story. There's a lot of twists and turns, and there's a lot of changes to the narrative at the very end of the story that you weren't expecting. I only gave this one 3 stars. I thought it was okay. I thought the writing was a little young, and I didn't really like Scarlet as a main character too much because she really just was kind of like the big sister, but also kind of young also in a sense as far as like how they were written. And so like the story wasn't like super good, but just to kind of give you a little bit of a sneak peek, I'm reading the second book, Legendary, right now, and it follows Tella, and by far much better. So as far as Caravelle, I'm only giving it 3 stars, but I actually do really recommend reading this series because it gets so much better in the second book, and you obviously do have to read the first book in order to kind of understand what's going on in the mechanics of Caravelle of the game. So yeah, long story short, really good book. I give it 3 stars. I definitely recommend it so that you can read the rest of the series. Okay, the next book that I read was for the Burned Books Club, which is held by Maddie over at Books Browsing Blog and Spoops over at Spoopy Hole, and the book is We Go On Forever by Sarah Govett. It was the July-August pick for the book club. That book club is basically a dystopian book club where they read a bunch of dystopian books, some of them very new books like this one, some of them very classic books like Day of the Tripids. And this book was interesting. I ended up giving it 4 stars. It's basically about these two people, Arthur and Alba. Arthur lives in, you know, like he's very rich. He lives in a society where basically they can be immortal because once they start to like have disease or start to like, you know, their body starts to fail, they can transfer their consciousness from their body to another body. And it's kind of similar to Altered Carbon. I actually talked about this in one of my vlogs. I think it was vlog 6. I can't remember exactly. But it's kind of like Altered Carbon, that they transfer their consciousness so that they can stay alive forever, basically. So like he kind of lives in this like, you know, he's very rich. He's actually part of the family that had created this concept, created this like opportunity to be able to live forever. And then there's Alba, who, you know, grew up basically thinking that the world was like consumed in radiation poisoning, and that you couldn't leave the compound that they lived in, that you had to like basically like learn and survive and be able to like get to the point where you are asked to go join this like team of scientists to be able to cure the world from this radiation poisoning. Except all of that isn't quite true, and they quickly figure out that like maybe their role isn't exactly what it's supposed to be. And Alba is actually starting to kind of figure this out, that like, hey, things don't make sense and I want to figure it out, and people are pushing back, and actually she feels like she's getting in trouble because she's asking these questions. I don't want to say too much more because half the fun is kind of figuring out what Alba and Arthur's position is and like how it ties together. But it was actually pretty good. I give it 4 stars because it was a little simple. Like the ending was kind of expected. I was kind of expecting it. It was not like super earth-shattering, and it kind of ended a little too quickly. Like I thought they could have prolonged it just a little bit more and kind of give it a little bit more deep detail and depth into the story. But it was still a really good book. I highly recommend it if you've never read a dystopian book before and you want to kind of experience what it's like. Then this is a really good kind of intro book to dystopian novels. Yeah, so I would really recommend it. It was really good. The next book that I read in the month of August was one that I was really anticipating. It was one of my most anticipated books of the year, and I bought it as soon as it came out. I wasn't able to read it the day that I bought it, but I was able to read it about a week later, and it is Stephen King's Billy Summer. It is his newest book that he had released this year. It is about Billy Summers, who is he's basically a hitman. He is known for killing people with his sniper gun that deserve to be killed. Like they're kind of morally gray. They're not good people, and he kills those not good people, which makes him kind of not good in a sense. But he only ever takes jobs that, you know, kind of mean something to him, that like will give retribution to someone else, or that he just feels as though like is necessary to be dead in order to prevent other deaths or other destruction or, you know, morbid events from happening. And so he is hired to basically kill this guy who was going to go to jail for life. He was going to be put to death, but then he was going on trial to be able to like just go to jail for life instead. And the person that hired him was like, hey, I want you to kill him before he's put on trial, so that way he doesn't just get away with being in jail for the rest of his life. And so half the book is him going through the assassination, and then there's a whole nother half to the story that actually goes into a lot more detail about like the after effects of the assassination, like what happens to him, what happens to other people around him, why did he get hired for the job, like what's going on outside of just that little important information from that story. And I actually really enjoyed it. I give it 4 stars. I wish it was a little, like, there were just some moments like in the beginning of the story that I was like, okay, it's good, but like it's not like super good. That's why I ended up giving it 4 stars. The second half of the book is actually when it really got interesting to me, and I actually really enjoyed it. I'm not a super big fan of like kind of thriller, mystery kind of books. Like I don't like them as much, and this was definitely more of a thriller story for for Stephen King. He's ran a lot of those recently. I prefer his more paranormal horror works more than his thriller works, but for a thriller story, I really enjoyed it, which is why I give it 4 stars. So if you don't necessarily like Stephen King as far as his paranormal aspect, then I highly recommend Billy Summers as a story. And honestly, same with Misery. Like just like I said, Misery doesn't have any paranormal aspects to it either, but a really good book. And then the last book that I read for the month of August was Out of Character by Annabeth Albert. Again, this was something that I was highly anticipating this year. I bought it the month before in July, and again, it was one of those moments where like I had a lot of books I was reading at the time, so I really didn't get a chance to be able to read this when I had bought it. But I finally was able to read it in the month of August, and it was honestly really, I loved it so much. It was a 5-star read by far. It is a sequel to Conventionally Yours, except it doesn't follow the main characters of Conventionally Yours. It actually follows Jasper, who was a minor character in Conventionally Yours, and it's basically about him falling in love with another character. His name was Milo. Yeah, Milo. He kind of starts falling in love with Milo, and there's kind of like this rivals to lovers kind of an aspect of the story, and that Milo had accidentally sold this like group of cards that are very expensive and very popular in the card game that is kind of like based around this and Conventionally Yours. He goes to Jasper and basically asks him, hey, I really need your help. I know you're like really big in the card community. Can you help me try and find these cards, or at least be able to win new ones that are the same, so that I can give them back to my brother, who he had basically taken the cards from and used them as a bet. And so like it starts off with like him just kind of asking for help with it, but then they kind of like end up realizing that there's more to this kind of quest of finding these cards than just getting the cards in general. That like Jasper and Milo end up realizing that there was a lot that was undiscussed between them in the past, and that yeah, there was a lot of like bad things that happened between them and why they ended up kind of separating when they were younger, but that there was a lot kind of unsaid between them, and that they ended up saying those things finally, both not only to themselves but also to other people in their lives. And it was just so sweet. It was so good. I couldn't put it down. I read it so quickly. I really wish I had read it sooner, to be honest, but I highly recommend if you like contemporary books, especially ones with male-male relationships and kind of like a D&D Magic the Gathering kind of feel to like the overall plot, then I highly recommend Out of Character and honestly Conventionally Yours. That was the first book in this kind of series. I believe the series is called True Colors by Annabeth Albert. It's just so good. Like I highly recommend it. Okay, so that's all of the books that I read in the month of August. I had also started A Gathering of Shadows, but I only had started it at the end of the month, so I ended up continuing on to the month of September, which is what I'm recording right now, and I ended up including that into my September kind of TBR in the end. I kind of used it for a couple of prompts for that for different readathons that I'm part of. If you want to know more about that, I'll go ahead and link the video for my September TBR where I play Bookopoly-thon and also talk about my magical readathon. But yeah, with that being said, I think that is pretty much it. So again, pretty good months. It kind of started off a little low with the 3 and 2 stars, but then immediately skyrocketed to have like really good 4 and 5 star books. And honestly, that trend kind of continued on into the month of September. Like I said, I'm recording this kind of far into September, and so far it has been an amazing reading month. So yeah, I love every single book that I've read, and honestly, I'm just really happy that that trend is continuing. But thank you so much again for watching this video. Comment down below if you read any of these books or if you have any recommendations for books similar to those, because I've honestly just been really enjoying Conventionally Yours, out of character kind of style, contemporary books that are very nerdy but very cute. So if you have any recommendations for those kind of books, please leave those down in the comment. Please like this video if you haven't already. Please subscribe to me if you want more content from me like this, or the other content that I provide, like the D&D sessions, the Pokemon Let's Plays, like anything like that. I thank you so much for, giving me the support that you have been recently. And yeah, thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!